Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. We're going to continue our beginner series. Last week we heat treated this baby. Now we're going to do the finish grinding and the hand sanding. And then next episode we're going to be putting a handle on it. We'll almost be done. So let's go down to the table and take a look. So here we are from last week where we heat treated this. We also straightened the warp, so you see a couple of little divots here that we're going to have to take out. But the first thing we're going to do is surface grind this. So whenever my steps after heat treating it is always surface grind it next. The parts we want to really make sure we get is the ricasso right here. Make sure that all the way down to the heel, all the way up and all the way down the spine, we want clean steel everywhere. This part doesn't matter as much, of course, because this is going to get hidden by the handle scales. But you do want to make sure you don't have any like little divots on the spine that will show through, or show a little gap between that and the handle material. We're not going to worry about the profile. Like I told you, I missed a couple of times with the straightening hammer, but I'm actually just going to grind down the profile after the scales are on it. And then make sure that I get a nice clean, no gaps here, and we'll clean up a couple of these little divots on the edge. Okay, so we're back at the grinder with our flat platen. We're going to do our surface grinding just by using a magnet and going up against the platen like that. One thing, if you do have a 2x72, this is where I definitely recommend a glass platen. And the reason is that you won't get as much wearing of your platen, because if you grind on the same place and you just have a steel platen, you're going to grind a groove there. It'll dish right there, and it dishes quite quickly. Within the first couple of months, you'll have a good dish there. So I recommend you all check your platen with a straight edge. That happens much, much slower with a glass platen. You might replace this every 3 or 4 years as compared to a steel platen. All right, so we're going to get our surface grinding done on both sides. Remember, you want to look down the platen from above. You want to make sure that the knife is coming against the platen even and not at an angle. You'll also notice I'm doing little circles. That makes sure I'm not pressing more on one side than the other, and that's what the little circles help prevent. So there's one thing I wanted to show you guys. Hopefully you can see it in the camera. Right here, there's like these little, almost like little ribs. That's decarb. When you see that on a blade while you're grinding, you need to keep grinding through that. Because if we were to etch this, and we're going to, if we were to etch this, that's going to be white. And the clean steel will be dark. So if you don't take that out, well, plus it's just soft steel. So we want to make sure we get that. So make sure you grind through these little kind of ribs or bumps here. So we got the flats all nice and ground. You can see the little divots here, which we'll remove later just by taking that down 1/16 of an inch. Now we're going to go back to our bevels. For this is where it's important to use a new belt, or a very, very sharp belt. I'm going to be starting with a 120, and it all depends on how much you have to remove. I don't have a ton to remove, so I'm just going to go right to a 120. And I'm going to finish on a 120. This is where I'm going to be probably pushing up this, the plunge line up about half the distance between where it is right now. Same technique I used before. I'm going to be very careful on this area to match both sides. You can see I had to take a little more off on this side with the surface grinder, which means I'm going to have to make sure I adjust for that in centering up the blade. All right, let's get to it. If you guys are looking for abrasives, whether it's belts and sandpaper, or steel, or handle material, or pins, or you name it, anything knife related, you can get it at Maritime Knife Supply. That's where I get all my stuff, and I think you should too. We start by hanging the belt off the platen just like we did before to make sure we get that nice curve in the top of our plunge line. I like to first work on the top of the bevel. I mean the line at the top of the bevel. I want to get that nice and straight and matching on both sides before I start thinning out the edge. Now I'm going to reset the plunge line. If you look closely, it's about 1/8 of an inch over from where it started now. Now I'm switching to the opposite side. I remember to hang the belt off the other side, and the task now is to make the bevels the same height on each side. The knife is hardened now, so it's important to dunk after every pass. You don't want to overheat the edge, particularly at the tip where it's the thinnest. The bevels look the same on both sides, and now it's time to thin out the edge. So all my pressure is going to be at the edge or the top of the blade. In addition to the edge, I'm making sure that the plunge lines meet exactly at the same place. That's really important and something that people will notice. Once I have the edge thickness that I want, I make sure to blend the bevel from the top of the bevel to the bottom and make sure it's one flat face. So here's the knife after final grinding. You can see it's not perfect. There's a couple places I wish I would have done better, but we're going to fix that up in the hand sanding, which is the next step. The important part is the edge is very thin. So for knives like this, I like to get the edge at least to about 0.010 of an inch. Just because you don't want a really big secondary bevel. And you'll see when we get to sharpening, the secondary bevel, the sharpening bevel, will be very small, which is what we want. So now let's talk about hand sanding. For some people, hand sanding is optional. If you can do a really nice belt finish and you can take this up to 400, 600 on a belt, then maybe you don't need to hand sand. For me, I always hand sand a blade. Unless I'm doing a very simple blade that I'm going to perhaps use the sandblaster and just sandblast the lines away, which is an option as well. But for this one, we're actually going to be acid etching this. So we're going to at least sand it up to 220 so we can acid etch it. Just like when we were at the grinder, we're going to start with the flats. We're going to do all of those first, and then we're going to move on to the bevel. And it's really helpful to have one of these, which is a knife vise where you can place the knife. You can also move this around when we do the handle, and you'll see when I do that. Another option is one of my automated sanding machines. So these are going to be on the market very soon. It basically just replicates you sanding by hand going back and forth because the table goes back and forth. So I'm actually going to be using this just to show you guys, but obviously it's going to be the same as you moving your hands back and forth. So here's our knife, all final ground and hand sand to 220. If I was going to do a satin finish on this knife, as in leave it silver, I would actually go up to at least 400 or 800. And when you're doing sanding like that, between grits, it's good to go a different direction, like 45 degrees in a different direction. Most times I'll do 220 like this, 400 like this, and then 800 this way. That'll give you a really nice finish. Because we're going to acid etch this, going to 400 or 800 is just overkill. So we're going to acid etch this and put the handle on in the next episode. Remember guys, this is going to be going to one of my Patreon members at the end of this series. So if you're not one of my patrons, maybe you want to consider it. You might win this knife. Thanks folks. We'll see you on the next one.